Hey there everyone, today I want to talk to you about looking after your mental health whilst using social media. So on Tuesday, I put out a question of the day on my Twitch stream and on my Instagram, which was, what is one thing that you do that you know is bad for your mental health, but you still do it? And we had some absolutely fantastic responses on that question, including things like alcohol and messing up your sleep cycle, staying in bed too long, not staying in bed long enough. But the one that came up the most was using social media. And this is the thing, is social media can be a bit of a double-edged sword. We all seem to not be able to live without it. There are a few people who do, but the vast majority of us will be on it in one form or another. And in fact, the majority of us will be on it in multiple forms. But if we're not careful about how we use social media, then ultimately our phone ends up using us rather than us using our phone. Now, there's a lot of different ways in which social media can affect your mental health, from comparing yourself to others, to exposing yourself to trolls, to just spending so much time on there that you feel like you don't get anything else done. I'm going to talk about all of those things today. But the place I want to start is by, number one, using social media mindfully. And I talk about this with what I call the 3 C's. And it's, what are you there for? This is the question. Why am I on social media? That doesn't have to be an overarching goal of why am I on social media in total. It can be why in this particular time have I chosen to go on social media. And I've categorized my social media use into what I call the 3 C's, which are consume, create, and connect. And if I am on for one of those things, then I don't go on for any of the others. And I want you to think about each one of these C's and think about making them a mindful process, one that you actually choose, rather than going on and ultimately being a mindless slave to that phone. Because we sometimes go on just out of sheer habit. So we'll go on, no real intention, and we'll just scroll and scroll and scroll, and we become reactive, and things that are on there bother us or even trigger us, and we just keep going. Now, if we look at the 3 C's, each one of those things, if you go on for a specific purpose, do that thing and then get the hell out of there. So if you're going in there to create your content, put that piece of content up, and then get out. If you're going on there to connect, there'll be a few people that you want to connect with. So instead of going into the feed and leaving it up to the chances of fate as to whether or not you find those people in your feed that day, go straight to their profiles. That way you're going to know, right, well, that's what that person's doing. Or go straight to the DMs and ask the person how they're doing. Instead of trying to connect through happenstance, through seeing who comes up in your feed. And if you're trying to consume, then there's probably specific things again that you want to consume. Unless you have carefully curated your feed, there's going to be things in there that you don't want to see and that you just feel like are a bit of a waste of time. So again, go directly to pages that you know are going to provide you value. Come on to channels on YouTube, for example, that you know are going to provide you value, rather than just kind of scrolling through. And I suppose one more C that came up in that is curate. Make sure the things that you follow still serve you. They probably did at some point, or there was probably a reason for following those people. It might have been that you wanted to connect with that person 5 years ago. It might have been that you wanted even just that person to see that you'd followed them. You wanted to be on their radar. It might have been that they provided you value for the place that you were in your life at that point, and that none of those things are relevant anymore. And it's okay to unfollow. In fact, it's pretty damn healthy to unfollow and to curate your feed and to make sure that when you go on and you go into that position, because it'll probably still happen no matter how careful you are, it'll probably still happen that you go on and you still do just some mindless scrolling. But you want to do what you can to make sure that that experience isn't filled with things that, again, you don't want to see, that aren't relevant for where you are in the place in life that you are right now. I often tell people to unfollow me if I don't serve them anymore. If at first they thought, oh, I love this mindset content, he's great, and now they go, oh, that Dave, all he does is go on about mindset, I'm bored of this now, don't like it anymore. Great, unfollow me. I don't want to have an extra follower that doesn't enjoy what I actually do. I would rather, well, my whole purpose of being here is to create content that people get value from. If you're consistently not getting value from the content I'm creating, then you're probably better served by a different creator than me, and that's cool, that's fine. With this idea of curating your feed in Twitter, it's a little bit more awkward because Twitter gives you recommendations and puts posts in your feed based on the people that you follow. So, you could follow someone that's got horrendous taste in accounts to follow, and you will see certain posts like that pop up. I follow someone who I completely and utterly love. I'm not going to say who it is, but he auto posts or auto retweets a lot of mental health things. It's auto thing. It's not, I don't think he's read them. And the thing is, there are people out there that use the mental health hashtag to spread the biggest hate or spread the biggest anger. And because this person's got his account set up to kind of try and, the purpose is to try and shine a light on other people who are talking about mental health, if he's not vetting those people directly, well, I end up with quite a number of questionable retweets in my feed. So that can be an area where it's a little bit harder to curate, because I still want to see this person's direct content, but I don't necessarily want to see the things that he retweets. And if there is an option to turn off seeing people's retweets, someone let me know about that. So while we're already talking about Twitter, let's go into point number 2, Twitter arguments. This applies to any arguments, but people argue more on Twitter. Any arguments in the comment section, because the thing is, when we're in an argument online, we think that we're in there to try and convert hearts and minds to our way of thinking, but really all that happens is, after about a tweet or two, we end up in there to win. And then we end up spending far too much energy, and and the other person's in there to win as well. And people tend to, when their goal is to win, go to any means necessary. So this is why people, even otherwise quite nice people, tend to become quite hateful behind a keyboard, because they get into an argument and then it starts mudslinging and there's no context. There is absolutely no kind of tone of voice on these things. That's why I love video. There's tons of tone of voice in this. You've got my body language. It's great. Hopefully you get an idea of who I am, what I'm thinking, more than just the words. But in Twitter and in other social media, that's just not going to happen in the comment section. Once you disagree with a person, that person switches into win mode. And the thing is with winning a Twitter argument, well, first of all, there's no independent adjudicator. So no one's actually ever going to say that you won. It's down to you to say whether you won. And the real question is, are you happy with the amount of energy that you expended on all of this? Are you happy with the amount of time that you spent on all this? And I know when I've got involved in Twitter arguments in the past, that becomes all I want to do that day. I want to check back in and see whether that person has actually replied. And I've got it in my head, even knowing all of this, I still have it. There's a little part of my head that goes, I'm gonna convert their mind. I'm gonna show them the error of their ways, and they're going to have, discovered the light, and just it just doesn't work. And you know what? Even if I did win, what I've lost in terms of all of that time that I've put into this, even the winners in Twitter or social media arguments end up losing. Number 3, how to deal with trolls. Trolls are a bugger, aren't they? Now, first of all, let's just say that nowadays there is this idea of calling any form of disagreement hate. Just as I said in the Twitter argument point a moment ago, as soon as you disagree with someone, you already posture yourself as their troll, and they see you as a troll. So that, and you know what? Sometimes the idea is to anti-troll. It's like the troll to troll, and then troll becomes a troll. See, often even when you disagree with someone, we have this knack these days of referring to it as hate. Is someone hating on you? Or is someone just disagreeing with you? And it's important to make this distinction, because the second that someone disagrees with you, if you then classify them as a hater, then you're surrounded by haters as opposed to just people who have opposing opinions. If you think about people who have opposing opinions and someone disagrees with you, that's fine. We're never going to agree on pretty much anything. We argue over whether the pineapple should be on a pizza. We argue whether PlayStation or Xbox is better. We argue over sports teams and over cities in the world and over food and over music. We argue over all of these seemingly innocuous things. So we're going to argue over the big things in life. We're going to argue over things like mental health. We're going to argue over things like race. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the person is a hater if they're disagreeing with you. Now, of course, if a person is being actually horrible and malicious, which again, if a person's trying to win a fight, it's not even convey a point anymore, they're trying to win a fight, people will go down that route. But it's important not to think of a person as a troll or a hater immediately as they disagree with you. Because if you go through your life thinking, oh, I've got so many trolls on social media, it's a whole lot of a different belief, and it's going to put you in a whole lot of a different mindset than saying, I've got people that disagree with me. Because the thing is, you disagree with them too. You're not their troll, are you? You're not a troll because you disagree with them. You're not a troll because you have a contrary viewpoint to them. And as a result, they're not a troll for having a contrary viewpoint to you either. A troll or a hater is someone who is actually engaging in behavior deliberately to upset. So how do we deal with them? Well, we actually don't feed the trolls. Again, going back to that point about arguments, it's like when you get into a slanging match with a troll, there's a great guy called Brooks Gibbs who does work on anti-bullying, and essentially he talks about how if you show kindness to a person, it takes all the wind out of their sails in terms of attacking you. He talks about anti-bullying and how if you are nice to a bully, when a bully insults you, if you are nice back, they don't know what to do with it. It doesn't throw fuel on the fire the way that coming back is, because ultimately what a bully is looking for, and trolls are just online bullies, a bully is looking for a reaction out of you because maybe they feel out of control in their life themselves, so they can go and control somebody else. Maybe they're miserable themselves, so they can go and make someone else miserable. Now, if you come back with nothing but kindness, yeah, they might pipe up one or two more times, but eventually they're just going to get tired. They're not going to do it. And similarly, if you can just ignore them, then again, they're not getting that reaction, so they're not getting what they want, so eventually they will leave. Remember, you can always block people. And yes, unfortunately, we live in a world where people actually create second accounts if you block them. But if that happens, block them again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. If that person's still coming back after 10 blocks, just keep on block, rinse, repeat, block, rinse, repeat. You know, it's like keep on blocking them. Be consistent in the blocking. And again, eventually that person's going to just go away. One more note on trolls before I move on. We have something called negativity bias, which means that we're more inclined to pay attention to things that could hurt us than things that can help us. So if we get 10 compliments in a day and we get 1 insult in a day, we're more likely to give more weight to that insult than we are the 10 compliments. This is built into us. It's a survival mechanism because, yeah, of course, historically it made more sense to pay attention to the things that could hurt you than the ones that could help you. Your ancestors that paid attention to the saber-toothed tiger and locked the doors and sharpened the spears lived long enough to have kids, and that's why you're here, as opposed to the ones that went, ooh, cute little kitty, and then got eaten. It pays to have negativity bias, but it can be an absolute pain in the bum when it comes to social media. We need to be aware of the fact that even before we have maybe a logical or processing reaction to a comment that we see, we're going to have an emotional reaction to it, and that negativity bias is going to kind of favor that. If you want to logically devalue that comment and you want to logically build up the compliments and the nice comments that you do and spend more time focusing on those, this is something that you have to do actively, because passively your brain is just going to give sway to that negativity bias. Number 4, spending too much time on social media. Now, unfortunately, I do see a lot of people who spend a lot of time on social media, and I often see that those people are the ones that are struggling the most. Now, you've got to ask the question, which way does the correlation go? Is the person on social media so much because they're struggling so much, or are they struggling so much because they're on social media so much? And the thing is, we can't really impact that in the direction of the person struggling so much, but what we can do is we can impact the direction of if you're on social media too much. I think it's a bit of both, really, because often nowadays social media becomes the one place for people to reach out. And when we do reach out, it's important to reach out, but we become vulnerable of not getting the response that we want. And on social media, it's hardly ever going to be the case that you get the response that you want. if you open up to an entire room full of people, you know, 1 or 2 people might come and actually say something to you. Is that going to be the 1 or 2 people that you want to come and say something to you in the room? Whenever we open up, there's 2 or 3 people in the world that we really want to see it. That might be a family member, a best friend, a mentor. And those are the people whose responses that we actually want and crave. But in light of not getting those, what we do is we kind of put things up and we hope that other people, just randoms, will kind of get involved on that post and give us the support that we need. With mental health, it's rife. You know, there's mental health support groups, and we think to ourselves, oh yeah, I'm in a support group that's got 750 members. I'm going to get all the support I need right now. And when you open up to a group of that size, everyone's sort of in the mentality of, oh, someone will do this. Someone will do this. And they're not someone. They're themselves. They're not someone. Someone else will do this. And as a result, no one else ends up doing it. And that can make you feel like no one's listening. And when a person doesn't get the response that they want on social media, a lot of the time that means that they'll go on to write a statement or a tweet or whatever it might be that really kind of almost begs for attention. It's not attention seeking, it's connection seeking. I don't really believe that someone who is suffering with their mental health is trying to get attention. They're trying to get connection, and attention is kind of the gateway to that connection. But then when that person writes that post, because they become desperate at the fact that people aren't responding to the one that they're actually saying, then they do tend to go, and I've done it myself, tends to go in an overly emotional way. It's not overly emotional, it's an adequate amount of emotion for how you feel at the time. But to the people reading it, if they didn't respond to the last stuff, seeing that higher level of emotion, if someone doesn't understand mental health the way you do, they're going to maybe see it as dramatic. And then we become vulnerable of being called attention seekers or drama queens or anything like that. And the thing with posts like that is when they don't get the response that you want, that can lead into going back and checking them over and over again to see if someone has replied. I did this 11 years ago. You know, I literally put my value in whether someone would respond to a post or not. And all it said was, I need a hug, and no hug came. And it was already at an extremely vulnerable time in my life. And it just made me feel even more vulnerable. And again, a lot of people will probably see it now and thinking, oh, someone will give him a hug. Someone will give him a hug. Oh, he doesn't really need a hug. He doesn't really need a hug. He doesn't. And in that situation, instead of going back on my phone every 5 minutes and checking it and just reconfirming the fact that nobody cares about me, what would have been a better idea is to go and see one of those few people, like my mum or my best friend, and just say to them, I need a hug. Or actually just go, I'm going to hug you now. Because ultimately, it was them who I wanted that connection from. It wasn't the, X amount of people that were following me on Facebook at the time. So we've covered 4 really big points there, and we're really just scratching the surface with all this. I have made a podcast specifically about this, which is a little bit longer. I'll put links to that in the description. And is there anything that you think that social media affects you with that you would like to hear discussed on this channel? Please drop that in the comments and let me know if there's another point that you think needs making on all of this. As always, if you've enjoyed this content, please hit that subscribe button so you can know when new content is going up. And also, if you want to join me for a live conversation around mental health and be part of our online community on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/mindsetbydave, and I stream live every Sunday at 7 till 10 p.m. and I would love to have you as part of the conversation.